What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of Timeout Tech. I'm Jake.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Will.
And today, we're bringing something new and fresh for you. First two episodes were very soccer heavy. We talked about soccer. We talked to CEO of DC United, Kevin Payne. We talked to a CEO of a small soccer startup called Playform named Shmulik Burrell. Links to those are going to be up top on the screen. But today, we're bringing something new and fresh. We're talking about skeleton. We're bringing in an Israeli skeleton athlete. I'm very excited for this episode.
Jared Firestone.
Yep. But before we get into that, let's talk about the hot Coliseum takes, right, Will?
For this episode, I know we're used to doing the hot takes. I'm not too sure there's specific hot takes to get into. We'll have to talk to Jared, but kind of prefixing what we're going to hear from him later without giving too many hot takes, I kind of think we should just let everyone know what Jared's about, let everyone know who he is, and give him some background. For those who don't know, Jared Firestone is a skeleton athlete representing the Israeli national team. He's hoping to qualify for the 2022 Winter Olympics, but one of his biggest accomplishments just came this past year during the 2021 North American Cup, when while representing Israel, he earns the bronze medal. So let's give it up a round of applause for Jared. That was Israel's first medal for a skeleton athlete. Huge accomplishment for Jared, and he did it posting a shocking 49.66 second run on a full mile track. I don't know if you guys are any freak athletes. I think I might be pushing it at this point. I'm out of my prime, maybe like a 10-minute mile. So to think 49.66 seconds, that's pretty insane to me. Also recording a top speed of 81.5 miles per hour on the run. I mean, how's that possible?
I don't know. It's crazy. Think about going downhill on ice at 81 miles an hour. It's crazy.
It takes a lot of will and it takes a lot of determination. We're gonna talk later about what it took for him to get to this level. This is unmatched. This is Olympic level. And if he goes on this track, we could be seeing him on television in 2022.
For sure.
I also think the craziest part of his whole journey is honestly just his story. He was a high school track athlete. By his senior year, he had 3 school records for his high school. He had won a district title in the 100-meter dash. And now we're 15 years, 20 years down the line, and he's in skeleton. Like, how did we get to this point? How do you go from a track athlete to a skeleton athlete? And I just think that's part of the craziness of his story. I'm sure we'll hear more about him later, but further adding to his story, in 2013, he suffered a minor stroke. As we said, in 2021, less than a decade later, he's earning a bronze medal. I think this guy is just an inspiration, and I'm hoping that he'll tell us some of that stuff later. But what a great story we're going to hear later today.
Yeah, and Andrew brought up something about being an Olympian and like what it takes to be an Olympian, and I mean that's the title of this episode is what does it take to be an Olympian? I mean Jared's in skeleton, but bringing it back full circle now, like talking about the Olympics in general. I wonder, like, we've seen LeBron train, we've seen Kobe train with the set with Dream Team V2 in 2012 and what was it, London or Beijing, whatever.
Beijing, I think.
But I wonder how that, like, his training and how a skeleton athlete. I mean, they're skeleton athletes argue like more of a freak athlete than like a basketball player, but
I think also what makes them a freak athlete is the mindset.
They're mental freaks.
You're going into something that is so not safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even. I wouldn't even say it's so out there.
Yeah.
Like if you're a basketball player, there are probably millions of other people who are experiencing the same emotions you're experiencing. Like yes, all the sports extreme stress, but like when you're in a basketball game and you're on the free throw line and you're feeling that stress of the last second free throw, there have been millions of people before you who have felt those same stresses. How many people have flown down an ice track at 81? Like, who do you even talk to about what you're experiencing?
I just think of the movie Cool Runnings. They took a Jamaican 4 guys. They were runners like this, and that I'm sure Jared's seen it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what an inspiration. I don't know how much more there is to say about it. Hopefully, as we said earlier, he'll get into it a little more, and we'll get to hear more of those details. And with that, I think we should bring him on.
Definitely. Let's do it. Jared, can you hear okay? Hey, Jared.
Yeah, pretty good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on to Timeout Tech. We're live. Excited to ask you a few questions, if that's all right.
Let's do it.
Just tell us a little bit about how you got into the sport of skeleton.
Okay, sure. So, I guess going back to college, I ran the 100 meters at Tulane University. Retired from my athletic career after that in 2012. to do so again. So once I was cleared by doctors, I started preparing to run track again. I was hoping maybe to do something like Maccabi Games or represent Israel on their track team. And then in 2014, I was watching the Sochi Winter Olympics and saw skeleton on TV. And I looked up the guys, and I could see something, you assume with these sports people start as kids, but I noticed that a lot of the athletes, at least the North American ones, went to college first, ran track, and then started the sport. So I was like, maybe I could get into that. So I went on USABobsled.com, went to a workout for them in the summer 2014, and then during my third year of law school, went for a week of sliding in Lake Placid, and they liked me enough to invite me back. So from there, I joined the Team USA development program, and that eventually led me to where I am now.
Definitely. You mentioned 2014, but let's go a year back to 2013. You suffer a minor stroke. How, in less than a decade, you earn a medal and become the player you are now?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, skeleton's kind of unique in that a lot of the athletes do start a little later in life. It's not as easy as the best guys make it look on TV when you're watching the Olympics, but definitely having an experience like the TIA gives you a different perspective and experience that I think gives me an edge in terms of competing, just in terms of appreciation for what I'm able to do. That makes it easier to train and sacrifice and just be grateful for the opportunities in general. And it's all just part of my story and maybe who I am.
Definitely. And what kind of sacrifices have you had to make, in your journey? You're 31 years old now, 10 years away, 10 years after you were a college athlete. Just talk about those sacrifices and your life decisions of being an athlete.
Yeah, I think most people know with athletes there's the physical sacrifices, obviously a lot of painful workouts. The sport itself is very physically taxing. Hitting ice walls at 80 miles per hour doesn't feel the best. There's the social sacrifices, not being able to go to travel with friends or do any fun activities, extracurriculars. And then our sport's sort of unique in the financial sacrifice. Each season costs me over $40,000 easily. The more you spend, the more resources and of an edge you have. And as a small nation, I'm competing against people from large countries that are fully funded. So it makes it's another challenge. But for me, even considering all those sacrifices, the experiences are really, it's hard to put a number on them. Just racing World Cup races with Star David on my head. It's way more meaningful than any bachelor party or any nights out can be. So, I think the financial part is the one people don't think about, that everybody on tour, and I'm sure in other sports, is really just scraping by, but it's just what we need to do.
You talk about the financial disparity from, a skeleton player from Israel and versus someone with Germany. How are you planning to raise that money for, trying for the Olympics in 2022, and what type of disadvantages or challenges are there as being a skeleton person from Israel versus the United States or Germany?
Right. So, a German athlete, for example, they are paid as if they're soldiers in the army, even though they're full-time athletes. So that's all they need to focus on, summer, winter. For me, I spend a few hours a day working as an attorney, selling some real estate, running around Miami, showing apartments, when I could be spending that mental and physical energy on sliding instead, and there's plenty of work to do even in the summer on it. And then, of course, fundraising. I do a lot of talks. I love doing them, and that's part of why I'm in the sport and why I want to represent Israel, is to have that platform. But mentally, it does take away from training, and fundraising is almost like another part-time job in itself.
Yeah, and then also for the viewers, obviously you're trying to compete in 2022. Can you tell us about that process and what it takes to be on those Olympic stages?
Right, so 25 men and women will each qualify in skeleton. The way it works is starting in November, qualifying races start, and then based on your rankings, after 8 races, There's different circuits, the North America Cup, Intercontinental Cup, World Cup. Depending on your country's flexibility, you can kind of bounce around between the circuits, or for larger countries, once you're on the circuit, that's where you compete for the whole season. But after the 8 races, they take everybody's ranking, and there's quotas, so obviously they don't want the whole sport to be Germans or Russians, so only like 2 countries can send 3 people, 6 send 2, and then 7 will send 1. So as an Israeli athlete, I'm really looking at one of those 7 single sled spots.
Jared, just want to thank you for coming on the podcast again. But diving more into the actual like a skeleton run itself, when you're at the top of the hill and you're preparing to go down, I mean, skeleton's like one of the most dangerous Olympic sports. Does that ever hit you? Does that ever cross your mind before you make a pass?
So it's funny, in races, it's the last thing on my mind. I'm just all I'm focused on is pushing the sled fast, and I don't even think about what's going to come after that. And definitely on training days, you have your good days and your bad days in terms of your motivation and everything like that. It's just natural. So there are days where you think what could go wrong, or you just don't feel like taking the beating. It depends what track I'm at this point. I can slide Park City blindfolded and not take too big a hit. But if I can go to new tracks where I haven't been, there's always that learning curve, and you just need that mental toughness. If you want to, you just got to think about why you're there and what you want from it, and use that to get you through it.
Hey Jared, another question for you. I heard you saying you practice law and do a little bit of real estate, and I feel like that's something that kind of goes under the radar, that most Olympians don't really have a full financial income that's sustainable strictly from their sport. So how many people really do work side jobs in addition to the Olympics, and how hard is it to balance everything going on?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to balance. Pretty much all the other small nation athletes are definitely working the summer. Like I mentioned, if you're a German or Russian athlete, that's your full-time job. But even American athletes, unless you're the top couple guys or girls, they're also not fully funded, so they need to work and not just, obviously you have life expenses outside of your sport. So people still need money for that, even if their costs are funded, but they're not being paid for the sport. So almost everybody in a sport like skeleton, which there's not too much lucrative sponsorship in, is working on the side.
Right, and is that something that you do feel like really affects you, or you do think it's not too bad to manage? Obviously, balancing is not easy, but is it something you think most people can easily attain, or does it really affect you?
Yeah, I think it could be. It depends on what your situation is. For me, if I was working in the winter, I just stopped taking work in the winter, and luckily I've been lucky enough to have the support from friends and family, and to be able to do that. The mental focus you need when sliding, and just the mental energy it takes out of you is so high that I really credit the people that do need to continue working during the season and perform well, because honestly it's exhausting. Obviously you want to be focused just on the sport, what you need to do, but it literally drains your central nervous system with all the G-forces and the speed you're experiencing.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely tough, but it's just something we got to do.
You mentioned the pressure and the preparation, but tell our viewers a little bit about how you prepare with your virtual reality headset, and you do different types of forms of training. Tell us about that, and how is that going to change the way Olympians prepare?
Yeah, definitely. So during the summer, there's only so much you can do in terms of preparing for sliding. You can work on your physical fitness and speed for the push start. Some places have indoor facilities where you can push a sled on ice and you can kind of go up and down, but you're not actually sliding down the track because you need the ice to do that. So when I first got into the sport, I was trying to get creative, different ways. A lot of people watch just video, which is good for building those memory, that instinctive memory of what you need to do in different situations if you've just seen it a bunch of times. People watch POV, but I felt like there was more I could be doing. So a few things I do. One is I do have an Oculus headset, and I use this program called NeuroTrainer, which is basically working on reaction, decision processing, vision, and just focus in general, hand-eye coordination. So I use their program a few times a week during the summer and a little bit during season just as like a primer. And then I work with this guy, Nick Davenport, who is a cognitive conditioning coach. He actually coaches Dustin Poirier too. So shout out to him for a big one this weekend. And we do tons of different things, working on focus, multitasking. We use different programs like Soma, and we use FitLight, and he creates his own unique program specifically designed to make a decision if you're going to steer or not steer. And so basically during the summer, it's the best I can do to sort of mimic those situations. So I think it gives me a huge edge. And I don't, obviously in our sport, people like to keep things secret, so I don't know what other people are necessarily doing, but I'm confident that nobody's has the same advantages I have doing both of these things.
Right, you have a professional that works with a Poirier, but this isn't the first time you've worked with professionals. When you were at Tulane, you beat Matt Forte in, I think it was a 40-yard dash. Tell us about that experience. Talk about Tulane as a track and field player and how that's helped you today.
Yeah, probably the highlight of my athletic career was beating Matt Forte in 80, I think around 80 yards or 80 meters.
Wow.
He was just, he was coming off his rookie season, and he was a big deal. And then he came back to finish his degree at Tulane. Really nice guy. But then he challenged me to a race, and it didn't end well for him twice. One of them still on YouTube. You can look it up. But,
And the caption is "White Boy Beats Matt Forte." And what is the caption of that video?
I think it's I gotta double check, but I think it's "White Boy Beats Matt Forte" race.
Sounds good.
So you can check that out on YouTube. There it is. So definitely running track at Tulane. It gives you a good edge converting to skeleton. Because pushing the sled is very important. Most of the countries, at least North American countries, Canada, U.S., that's how they recruit new athletes. It's just based on your speed and strength. They say that the push start's only 30 meters, but the momentum you create from it has like 3 times the value heading down the track. So if you push 0.1 faster than somebody, you're getting like 0.3 times that value in terms of final downtime. And in a sport like ours, where you're going so fast, 0.3 seconds, 2 runs, that's 0.6 seconds, and that's the difference between top 3 finish and not making the top 10.
Jared, last question. Thank you again for coming on, but one last question. Someone from South Florida that practices in Lake Placid, Park City, and all around cold places. How does your background in track help you to succeed, like we just mentioned? But seriously, what I want to talk about is playing for Israel. What does that mean? What does that mean, having that on your helmet? And what do you think about when you, every time?
Yeah, so I think it gives, for me, so for example, this last season, I won Israel's first medal in a North American Cup in Lake Placid. And obviously on a personal level, it meant a lot. I had a serious surgery last summer. And the way I got through that time when I couldn't work out or do anything was just visualizing standing on the podium with the flag of Israel behind me.
Wow.
And the year before, my best finish was 8th place, so it was a big jump. But just being so motivated to represent Israel just made it easy to put in all the mental work that I needed. And then once the physical part caught up later in the season, it all kind of came together. So on a personal level, that was important to me. But for me, it's really about the flag representing Israel, the Star of David on my helmet. The journey in our sport is way too lonely for it to be just about you individually. So for me, I think it gives me an edge in terms of my preparation. And when I'm pushing the sled, all I'm thinking about is people are seeing that Star of David on my helmet, and they're seeing ISR Israel on the result sheet. And for me, that's really what motivates me through the cold, through hitting the walls, through all the financial sacrifices, just knowing that I need to be there representing Israel and making being a positive influence
Well, that's amazing, and thank you so much for coming on. And good luck with everything. We're rooting for you. And everyone tune in. God willing, you'll be representing the Israeli flag in 2022.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on, guys, and good luck on everything.
See you, Jared.
Bye.
All of Jared's social medias are going to be linked down below for YouTube viewers and for Anchor viewers. So, guys, that was a really sick interview.
Yeah.
So cool. The one thing that I took away is I like when I watch skeleton, I get nervous for the people because like luge, skeleton, like they're the same thing. And there's been events on national TV where you see people die going down on TV, and I thought it was really cool when he's just like, I just lock in and I do my thing. It's a matter of how fast I go, and he doesn't think about it. It's pretty crazy.
I feel like for a lot of athletes, it's that moment when you enter the zone that you kind of just forget about everything else and you kind of just get in your element and really just forget about anything other than what you're doing. Like, for me, baseball player, when I'm pitching, when I'm on the mound, like, I don't know anything else other than, like, I'm pitching. Like, when you're skeleton, you're getting ready to go, like, that's what you're doing. And it is crazy in a sport like that you can zone everything else out, but I think that that's what makes some of these Olympic athletes so special, is that they're just able to really lock into such a level that everything else becomes irrelevant, and it really is just the pride they have in what they're doing that pushes them to that next level.
And also what I think is commendable is the sacrifices he makes. He goes to Tulane, and amazing. He said it was such a fun school, but all he was caring about was, school and being an athlete. And that type of discipline, I think, has really carried over to, he just locks in and is focused on the task at hand. And he was really amazing to talk to.
Yeah. I also think, too, like, it's a good message for people, like, for kids growing up now and for kids who are athletes. Like, he was an insane track and field runner at Tulane, but he ended up doing skeleton. Like, he didn't pursue his dream in track and field, and I think that's a good message for everyone. It's just, like, regardless of what sport you do growing up, there's always another medium for you to go through in order to get to your dreams.
I also thought it was crazy how casual he was about suffering a minor, but a stroke in 2013. Yeah. Like, for most people, that's at least athletically the end of the line.
Yeah.
Most people do not even consider coming back, and now we're less than a decade later, and as he said, already has a bronze medal in the North American Cup, which, significant for anyone, means even more, as it's one of the first, or not one of the first, skeleton medal for an Israeli, so for someone representing the Israeli flag. So I really do think that's such a special accomplishment coming back from something so significant just a decade before.
I thought it was interesting hearing like the way the Olympics work. It's 25 men and women, but it's not just from one country. I think that's good, so it like makes it an even playing ground. Mm-hmm. If it weren't like that, it would just be Germany, England, America, maybe other countries. But this puts a light on Israel, it puts a light on Jared, and also shows that there's always an opportunity to do something. Like you said, he was a track runner, but also he's from South Florida. There's not many skeleton like practice fields. You know what I mean?
It's like the most not Florida sport.
Yeah. All right, with that, I feel like it's time to transition into our startup of the week. Let everyone know what we've been looking into, what we think's coming up in the sports tech world. Jake, you want to take it from there?
So our startup of the week this week is a company called Socios. And essentially what Socios does is they're a company that wants to make the fan experience better. Essentially what they do is they have a website and a platform and an app. And on this app, it allows you to interact with the team directly via polls or via other interactive mediums. And you can help your team make decisions when your team's playing. I think it's pretty cool.
I mean, as a fan, what more can you ask for? You're sitting there all the time. You're thinking, what are they doing? If only I could make these decisions. Well, now you can. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if you're making the substitutions. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but as a fan, just to be able to influence the game or influence the team in any way you can really does enhance your feeling of connection with the organization.
And I think that's the future of fan engagement. That's what sports tech is. How are fans going to feel in the game? How are they going to feel involved? I think this is an amazing startup. Everyone should definitely check it out. The website for this startup will be on our description of our YouTube video. Mm-hmm. This was so cool. Having the opportunity to talk to Jared, talking about this startup.
Such an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, it was a great episode. Well, that's all we got for you this time on Time Out Tech. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Take care of yourself. Take care of the others around you. We'll see you next time.
Peace.